There is an ancient secret, one that the most successful people you have ever admired, the ones living the lives you quietly long for, have never openly shared with you. And it has absolutely nothing to do with money, connections, or luck. The great thinkers who descended into the deepest layers of the human mind, Carl Jung among them, discovered this secret long before the modern world had any language for it. The most accomplished individuals on this planet are those who have figured out how to direct and govern their own consciousness. And more often than not, this knowledge has remained hidden, as though your success might somehow threaten the position of those who already possess it. But the real difference is not found in talent, academic credentials, or the opportunities that happened to cross your path. The difference is concealed in the conversation currently spinning inside your head, the one happening right now, in this very moment, as you move through your day. While you walk down the street mentally scolding yourself and replaying past mistakes on an endless loop, the people you admire are using that same inner space to develop themselves and build their next victory. While you use your inner voice to rehearse failure, they use that identical voice to rehearse success. While you speak to yourself as though you were your own worst adversary, they speak to themselves as though they were their most devoted and trusted companion. This is not empty motivational rhetoric or some naive suggestion to simply think positive thoughts. This, as Carl Jung himself pointed out, is the very mechanism through which reality is constructed and shaped. Your internal dialogue is the programming language of your entire life. And unfortunately, most people are operating on faulty software. Software loaded with viruses that were installed in their minds years ago without their awareness or permission. The wealthy, the powerful, the spiritually fulfilled, they have learned how to debug that corrupted code and install new programs that work in their favor. Drawing from the wisdom that flows through Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, they have come to understand that their thoughts do not merely reflect reality, they actively create it. While they have used this knowledge to build entire empires, you may have been using it, unknowingly, only to manufacture excuses. But today, I am going to hand you the same code they have been using. Drawing from the depth psychology of Carl Jung, I am going to show you how to reprogram your mind in just 7 days, and how to stop settling for the limited life you assumed you deserved and begin constructing the life you genuinely desire. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. If this message speaks to something real inside you, subscribe to Carl Jung Philosophy and hit the like button, because what comes next may genuinely change the way you see yourself and the people around you. Right now, in this precise second, there is a voice inside your mind. It has been speaking to you since the moment you opened your eyes this morning. This voice has been your most faithful and sometimes your most brutal traveling companion for years. What most people fail to notice, or are perhaps too afraid to confront, is this: that inner conversation is constructing your lived experience moment by moment, without pause, without rest. Approximately 60,000 thoughts pass through your mind every single day. And the vast majority of people spend roughly 90% of those thoughts simply repeating the same mental patterns they had yesterday. They wake up and the mind immediately begins playing the same worn record, the same anxieties, the same complaints, the same self-imposed limitations. But what if you could completely transform that inner dialogue in just 7 days? What if you could begin speaking to yourself the way those high-achieving individuals you admire speak to themselves, with the clarity and conviction of a genuine sage? What if you could direct those 60,000 daily thoughts toward weaving, thread by thread, the life you actually want to inhabit? Your current reality is a flawless mirror of how you have spoken to yourself up until now. If you are experiencing financial strain, listen carefully to what you have been whispering to yourself about money. If your relationships keep failing, pay close attention to the internal narrative you carry about love and your own worthiness of it. The outer world is always and without exception a direct reflection of the inner one. Most people's relationship with themselves is, tragically, an abusive one. The crushing, demeaning words they would never dare say to a friend, they direct at themselves without a moment's hesitation. But when you transform this conversation, your entire existence begins to shift around it. The real awakening is recognizing that you have been programming yourself unconsciously through your internal dialogue all along. Now you are about to learn how to do it deliberately, guided by Carl Jung's principle of bringing the shadow into the light of conscious awareness. Most people exist on autopilot. They rise, and the mind immediately launches the same exhausted program. I am too tired. I am not good enough. I cannot handle this. Does any of that sound familiar? This mental noise operates like a broken radio station playing in the background of your life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for most people, that station plays only the saddest, most defeated songs from the archive of past failures, crushed hopes, and unresolved fears. But the power to change that station has always resided in your hands. When you begin speaking to yourself the way genuinely successful people do, everything transforms. Think of the most confident, most accomplished person you know personally. Do you honestly believe they wake up each morning and immediately begin listing all the reasons they cannot succeed? Do they spend their days consumed in self-criticism, doubting their abilities, and fixating on every possible thing that could go wrong? Of course not. They have learned to use their internal dialogue not as a tool of destruction, but as an instrument of deliberate creation. We were all taught in school how to read, write, and calculate. But not one of us was ever taught how to speak to ourselves in ways that genuinely inspire and elevate. So by default, we absorbed the patterns of the people around us, perhaps from worried parents, perhaps from anxious teachers, perhaps from a culture that confuses self-criticism with humility. Your thoughts generate your emotions. Your emotions direct your actions, and your actions deliver your results. This cycle either keeps you imprisoned or sets you entirely free. When you consciously direct your thinking, you feel different. When you feel different, you behave differently. And when you behave differently, you begin receiving completely different results from life. As Carl Jung himself emphasized, the mind cannot reliably distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. When you tell yourself that you are confident and capable and worthy of success, your mind accepts this as absolute truth and begins reorganizing your entire biology around it. When you consistently speak as though you are already becoming the person you want to be, you literally embody those qualities in the present moment. But most people do the precise opposite. They rehearse failure. They practice anxiety. They reinforce their own limitations with every passing thought. They wake up and mentally plan for things to go wrong, and then they genuinely wonder why life feels so relentlessly difficult. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you change the way you treat yourself. When you change the way you treat yourself, your entire posture in the world shifts. And when your posture shifts, the world begins responding to you differently. People treat you differently. Opportunities arrive at your door through entirely different channels. This is not self-deception or performance. This is aligning your internal dialogue with who you truly are and who you are in the process of becoming. This is the conscious and deliberate breaking of old conditioned habits and the intentional construction of a new self, one chosen conversation at a time. The extraordinary beauty of this practice is that it costs nothing. You need no special equipment, no certification, no one's permission or approval. All that is required is that you begin paying genuine attention to how you speak to yourself, and that you choose a different path each time you notice the old one pulling you backward. Over the next 7 days, you are going to transform your relationship with yourself through conscious and deliberate internal dialogue. 7 days is the ideal period for beginning to fire new neural pathways and establish fresh mental templates. Why 7 days specifically? Because it is exactly the duration needed to start breaking automatic patterns. Within 7 days, you build enough momentum to genuinely feel a shift. You begin feeling different, behaving differently, and witnessing different outcomes materializing around you. Throughout these 7 days, you will move through 3 distinct levels of transformation. The first is becoming aware of how you currently speak to yourself, because most people have no conscious awareness of their inner dialogue whatsoever. The second is learning to interrupt the old patterns and replace them with new ones. The third is elevating your internal dialogue to the level of the extraordinary person you are in the process of becoming. The key to lasting success in this practice is consistency, not perfection. You do not need to catch every single negative thought. You simply need to be more conscious than unconscious, more deliberate than automatic. Every time you catch yourself and choose a better inner conversation, you are rewiring your mind and creating your new reality along the path Jung called individuation. Your environment matters enormously during these 7 days. Surround yourself with people, books, and content that support and reinforce the new inner conversation you are building. Limit your exposure to negativity, harsh criticism, and the constant messaging of limitation. Remember, you are attempting to install a new operating system in your mind, and that process becomes dramatically easier when you're not being continuously bombarded by the old programming from every direction. Now let us begin with the first 2 days. Days 1 and 2 are the days of awareness and intervention. Here you become a neutral and impartial observer of your own thinking. Most people have become so deeply fused with their thoughts that they actually mistake themselves for their thoughts. But as Jung observed, you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that has the power to choose its thoughts. Your task during the first 2 days is beautifully simple. Catch yourself. When you notice yourself speaking to yourself in critical, negative, or limiting ways, simply notice it. You do not need to change anything yet. Just observe. Cultivate a genuine sense of curiosity about your own patterns. How frequently do you criticize yourself throughout the day? What specific situations or triggers activate this negative inner conversation? What are the most common limiting phrases your mind tends to generate? When you catch yourself, use the power of the deliberate pause. Draw a slow, conscious breath. Simply acknowledge that you are observing your thought rather than being controlled by it. This awareness, this act of stepping back and seeing rather than being swept away, is the very first gateway to freedom. Most people move through entire days without once noticing what they are actually telling themselves. But you are different now. You are waking up to your own inner architecture. Rather than judging yourself for having negative thoughts, approach them with the curious detachment of a scientist. Ask yourself, where did this particular thought originate? Is this thought genuinely serving me, or is it quietly working against me? Is this thought rooted in something real and present? Or is it simply an old and outdated program running on habit? Look at your own mental patterns not with frustration and disappointment, but with a quality of genuine fascination. The intervention technique itself is straightforward, but carries the kind of precision Jung would have recognized immediately. When you catch yourself inside a negative inner conversation, simply say, either aloud or internally, stop, or cancel, or delete. You are literally cutting the flow of the old program midstream. Then take a deep breath and consciously select a different thought. You do not need to leap immediately into some wildly optimistic declaration. Simply choose something more neutral, more kind, more genuinely supportive of where you want to go. For instance, if you catch yourself thinking, "I always ruin everything," interrupt that pattern and replace it with, "I learn and grow from every experience I encounter." If your inner voice insists, "I cannot handle this," shift to, "I am discovering creative and effective ways to get what I truly want." If the voice says, "I am not intelligent enough," you can replace it with, I am continuously expanding my knowledge and developing my capabilities in new directions. The aim is never to eliminate negative thoughts entirely. That is neither possible nor necessary. The aim is to develop a conscious awareness of your internal dialogue and to begin deliberately selecting thoughts that support rather than sabotage your deepest intentions. Every time you do this, every single time, you strengthen your capacity to be the master of your mind rather than its helpless prisoner. Days 3 and 4 carry you to the next level entirely. These are the days of transformation and redirection. Now that you have been practicing the art of noticing patterns and interrupting them, the time has arrived to consciously install new ones. Here, you begin speaking to yourself the way you would speak to your closest and most beloved friend, the way you would speak to a young child you adore, or to someone whose well-being you would protect with everything you have. Human beings are extraordinarily harsh with themselves. The words they direct inward, the accusations, the contempt, the dismissals, are things they would never dream of saying to another person they cared about. But what if you began extending to yourself the same warmth, the same encouragement, and the same patient support that you so naturally offer to the people you love most? What if instead of being your own harshest and most relentless critic, you chose to become your own most devoted advocate? During days 3 and 4, practice speaking to yourself with genuine compassion and deliberate care. When you make a mistake, instead of launching an internal assault, ask yourself, what can I actually learn from this experience? When you encounter a difficult problem, instead of fixating on all the reasons you cannot overcome it, remind yourself of every challenge you have already navigated and survived in your past. When fear arises, instead of telling yourself you are weak for feeling it, acknowledge how genuinely courageous you are for continuing to move forward in spite of it. The art of reframing carries extraordinary weight during this phase of the practice. This is Jung's alchemy in its most practical and accessible form, taking the same raw situation and finding a different way to speak about it, a different angle from which to approach it, a different story to tell about what it means and where it is leading you. Instead of saying, "This is unbearably difficult," try this. "Is strengthening me in ways I cannot yet fully see." Instead of, "I have no idea what I am doing," try, "I am learning everything I need to know as I move forward." Instead of, "I am falling behind everyone around me," try, "I am walking my own singular and unrepeatable path at exactly the right pace." Transform every "I cannot" into "I am learning how to." This seemingly small shift in language does something remarkable. It stops closing doors and starts holding them wide open. "I cannot speak confidently in front of others" becomes, "I am learning to communicate with genuine confidence and presence." "I cannot build my own business" becomes, "I am learning everything required to create something of my own." "I cannot find the right relationship" becomes, "I am learning how to draw the right person naturally into my life." These are not mere semantic games. They are structural changes to the inner architecture of belief, and they compound with extraordinary power over time. Build momentum through small but genuine victories. Acknowledge every positive shift, no matter how modest it appears. Celebrate every moment of awareness, every instance where you caught yourself and consciously chose a better thought. Your internal dialogue should become a celebration of progress rather than a relentless audit of deficiency. Speak to yourself about what is working, what is developing, what is becoming possible. Remember, you are not attempting to convince yourself of something false. You are choosing to focus on the aspects of reality that genuinely serve your growth, rather than the aspects that merely confirm your limitations. Both perspectives exist simultaneously and are available to you at every moment. You can direct your attention toward what is broken or what is whole, toward what is absent or what is present, toward what is impossible or what is entirely within reach. The choice belongs to you and no one else. Days 5, 6, and 7 represent the phase of elevation and embodiment. This is where you stop speaking as the person you currently are and begin speaking as the person you are actively in the process of becoming. You start conversing with your future self, that confident, accomplished, deeply fulfilled version of you that is already present as a potential within your psyche right now. This is not performance or pretense. As Jung described it, this is the awakening of the archetype that already lives within you as pure, unrealized potential. Your future self is not a separate being. That person is you, but with different habits, different convictions, different conversations, and different daily choices. When you begin speaking to yourself as that person would speak, you begin embodying those qualities in the present moment, rather than waiting indefinitely for them to arrive. Ask yourself these questions with genuine seriousness. How does your future self speak to itself? When that confident and grounded version of you encounters a significant obstacle, what does it say internally? How does your successful self relate to setbacks and temporary failures? What kind of inner conversation does your fulfilled self maintain throughout an ordinary day? Begin having those conversations now, not someday, not when circumstances improve, but today. Elevate your emotional state through the deliberate and intentional use of language. Rather than simply thinking positive thoughts in a passive and disconnected way, choose thoughts that actively generate high-frequency emotional states, genuine gratitude, authentic excitement, deep inspiration, expansive love, and the kind of quiet joy that does not depend on external conditions. Emotion is the fuel that ignites genuine transformation. When you combine new and elevated thoughts with the corresponding emotional states they naturally generate, you create a powerful condition of being that draws new experiences, new people, and new opportunities toward you with a force that often feels almost inexplicable. The power of a gratitude-based internal dialogue cannot be overstated or dismissed as sentiment. Instead of dwelling on what is absent from your life, Begin speaking to yourself about what you are genuinely grateful to have right now. Instead of complaining about your current circumstances, acknowledge and appreciate how far you have already traveled. Instead of worrying about an uncertain future, cultivate deep appreciation for the opportunities that are already finding their way to you. Speak about your future as though it is already unfolding in the present moment. I am deeply grateful for the success that is flowing into my life. I love and appreciate the confident and capable person I am becoming. I appreciate how naturally and effortlessly I attract the right circumstances and the right people. This is not self-deception. This is aligning your inner dialogue with your deepest intentions and the true direction of your life's trajectory. When you begin shifting your internal conversation in these ways, your body responds almost immediately and without delay. Stress hormones begin to decrease because you are no longer triggering the fight or flight response through relentless negative self-talk. Your immune system gradually strengthens because you are no longer depleting it through chronic self-criticism and sustained anxiety. Your energy levels rise because you are no longer exhausting yourself through constant internal conflict and the grinding effort of resisting your own thoughts. You will begin sleeping more deeply and restoring more completely because your mind is no longer locked in combat with negative scenarios and cycles of self-blame through the night. You will wake feeling genuinely rested. Your digestion improves, your blood pressure stabilizes, your heart rhythm becomes more coherent and regulated. Your body literally begins healing from the accumulated damage of chronic stress and the years of toxic internal conversation you have been directing at yourself. When you stop poisoning yourself with destructive thinking, your entire physical system, freed from the exhausting work of defending against a constant internal assault, can redirect all of that energy toward genuine repair, regeneration, and renewal. You begin looking healthier. You begin feeling younger, because you are no longer at war with yourself on the inside. Your dreams may even begin to shift in quality and tone, because your subconscious mind is now processing healthier and more constructive symbolic material in the language that Jung spent his lifetime decoding. You may begin waking with solutions already forming, with creative insights arriving before you have even fully opened your eyes. The transformation in your relationships will surprise and perhaps astonish you. When you alter the way you speak to yourself, your interactions with every other person in your life automatically begin to transform as well. You become more genuinely confident, more naturally positive, and far more enjoyable to be around. People begin noticing the change in you, even when they cannot articulate precisely what has shifted. You become less defensive in difficult conversations because you are no longer constantly attacking yourself on the inside and therefore do not need to protect yourself so vigilantly on the outside. You become more open to honest feedback and genuine criticism because you are no longer filtering every piece of information through a lens of relentless self-judgment. You become more generous and patient with others because you have learned to be genuinely generous and patient with yourself first. You begin attracting an entirely different quality of people and circumstances into your life, because you are now operating from an entirely different energetic frequency. This is a genuine leap in confidence and self-assurance, and the people around you feel it immediately and instinctively. When you stop tearing yourself down in the privacy of your own inner world, you naturally stand taller, speak with greater clarity, and connect with others from a place of authentic presence rather than anxious performance. People are drawn to this quality of energy. In a world populated by individuals who are constantly at war with themselves, your hard-won inner peace becomes something genuinely rare, something that others feel without being able to name it. When you address yourself with deep and consistent respect, you naturally extend that same respectful foundation to every relationship you enter. When you genuinely believe in yourself from the inside, others feel that conviction and begin believing in you as well. Let us be completely honest with each other about what lies ahead. Your old habits will resist this change with considerable force. These patterns have been governing your life for years, perhaps for decades, and they have absolutely no intention of releasing their grip without a struggle. You may find yourself forgetting to practice, drifting back into familiar thought patterns, or even feeling temporarily worse as you become increasingly aware of just how negative your internal conversation has actually been. This resistance is entirely normal, and it is, in truth, a deeply encouraging sign. As Jung himself noted, it is evidence that you are changing something that genuinely matters. The old personality, the one constructed layer by layer upon years of negative self-talk, does not wish to dissolve. It wants to keep you contained within the familiar territory it knows, even when that territory is causing you genuine harm and suffering. Anticipate this resistance and make the firm decision in advance that you will not allow it to pull you off course. You may also encounter skepticism from within yourself and from the people around you. Your rational mind may insist that something this straightforward cannot possibly produce real results. The people in your environment may question what you are doing, or subtly attempt to draw you back into the old and limited conversations you used to share with them. All of this is simply part of the process. Remain loyal to your practice, regardless of what others think or say about it. And if you forget to practice, simply begin again. Do not use a moment of forgetfulness as evidence that this approach does not work, or that you are somehow incapable of genuine change. Treat it as a natural and expected part of the learning curve. Every single moment you remember and consciously return to the practice of deliberate inner dialogue, you are strengthening the muscle of awareness itself. Showing yourself genuine compassion throughout this process is not optional. It is absolutely essential. If you catch yourself criticizing yourself for being self-critical, you have simply added another layer onto the very pattern you are working to dissolve. Instead, appreciate the moment of awareness itself. Celebrate each instance where you recognized the old pattern and chose something better. Be patient and genuinely kind with yourself as you develop this new skill. Stay committed even when results do not appear to be arriving on the schedule your ego has decided upon. Some people notice significant shifts within hours or days. Others require more time for the new roots to establish themselves deeply enough to become visible. Trust the process completely. Every single moment of conscious and positive inner dialogue is restructuring your mind at a level deeper than what the eye can see, even when no outward evidence of change is yet apparent. When your motivation wavers, and it will waver, return to the most fundamental reasons you began. Remember what it has felt like to be under constant assault from your own mind. Remember the life you are committed to creating and the person you have chosen to become. What Jung called the individuated and fully integrated human being. Use these reminders as the fuel that keeps you moving when the road feels long. Once the foundation is firmly established, more advanced dimensions of this practice become available to you. Combining your internal dialogue with deliberate visualization makes the entire practice dramatically more powerful. While speaking to yourself in positive and affirming ways, simultaneously run vivid mental imagery of yourself succeeding, expanding, and living the life you are building. Use specific language patterns tailored to different areas of your life. If you are working to transform your financial situation, speak to yourself about abundance, genuine value creation, and the energy of true generosity. If health is your focus, speak in the language of vitality, strength, and cellular renewal. Timing matters enormously in this practice. The first several minutes immediately upon waking and the final minutes before sleep are the most potent windows available for installing new patterns. During these transitional states, your mind is operating in the alpha and theta brainwave frequencies. It is vastly more receptive and impressionable than during ordinary waking hours. Use these windows with full, deliberate intention. Create personal mantras and inner affirmations that resonate specifically and deeply with you as an individual. Rather than borrowing generic phrases that feel hollow or disconnected, develop an internal dialogue that speaks directly to your unique situation, your specific goals, and the particular challenges you are navigating. Adjust your approach according to your own natural temperament. If you are analytically oriented, incorporate logic and concrete evidence into your inner conversation. If you are emotionally driven, focus on how these new thoughts genuinely feel in your body. If you are naturally creative, work extensively with metaphor, symbol, and vivid imagery. The ultimate aim is never to complete 7 days and then return to unconscious living. The aim is to make conscious and deliberate inner dialogue as natural and automatic as breathing itself, your new default way of moving through the world. Right now, in this precise moment, you are standing at a genuine crossroads. You can continue living inside the old internal conversation that has generated the life you currently have. Or you can make the decision, starting with the very next thought that crosses your mind, to speak to yourself differently. The transformation does not begin next week or next month. It begins with the next word you say to yourself. Your future self is not a distant fantasy. As Carl Jung understood with extraordinary depth and clarity, that person already exists within you right now, fully formed as pure potential, waiting for the inner conversations that will finally call them forward into the light. Every single moment you speak to yourself as that person, you become them a little more completely. Subscribe to Carl Jung Philosophy for more content that reaches beneath the surface of how we think, feel, and create our lives. Share this with someone who is ready to change the most important conversation they will ever have, the one they are having with themselves.